Hi, everybody. Join me for part 12 of The Alley by Mingo Rubio Jr., which is my father, read by his daughter, Natalie Rubio, the one and only. We're going to do part 12, 20 minutes. Let's do it. I will be going live shortly, so I want to fit this in because part of it will be what I'm reading today during my live. 20 minutes. Let's get it. The demons were gone. We were left in disbelief. Then we could sort of relax a little bit, or at least try. Suddenly, a strange sound interrupted our relief. The other creature was gasping. It was still alive. Mr. Kim said, "It's not over yet, kid. Get the sword. The creature's moving. There is no time to waste." Then Mr. Kim noticed something and said, "My Lord." He said, "Look at it. The creature has a man's face." When I saw the creature's face, I fell to my knees, and when I got a little closer, I could see its eyes. Then I looked at Mr. Kim and said, "Do you see what I see?" He said, "I never doubted you, kid. I'm just so surprised." Everyone stood there looking on, utterly amazed. Mr. H said, "I can see it, but I can't believe it's true." We had to be careful and not give our secret away, and there were only 4 of us that actually knew. We had to play it off as if it was a perfect stranger so the others wouldn't know what they were looking at. We made them think that it was a freak of nature, so our so-called little secret would remain intact. He looked at me. I knew what he was going to say. He quietly told me, "You know what you have to do." I didn't want to kill it, but there was no other way, and somehow, someway, I had to see it through. Oh my goodness. As I looked into the creature's eyes one last time, the creature's eyes seemed to fill up with tears. It must have felt my soul and what I had in my mind. If so, then it knew that its pain would end right here. I stared into its eyes almost as if to say farewell. Mr. Kim softly says to me, "I know it's hard letting go." He went through it. He knew the pain that I felt. He said, "Now, end his suffering, release his soul." I quickly drew my sword. Mr. Kim said, "Do it, son." And with one mighty swoop, the job was complete. He looked up to the heavens and said, "It is done." Then he looked around and said, "But it was costly." 14 showed up for the battle in our rendition, yet two guys would never again see the light of day. Nobody wanted to die, of course, on our expedition, but we all knew going in the price that we could pay. Mr. Kim sat down, his arms folded over his chest. Then he said, "It's a miracle that any of us survived." He sat there, and it seemed like he was short of breath. After waiting a few minutes, our help finally arrived. Then we all looked up. The moon was then exposed. Evidence of the lunar eclipse quickly disappeared. Night seemed to turn into day by the moon's glow. Then Mr. Kim said, "I need 2 guys to stay here." He said, "All of the corpses must now be burned. We must do this to ensure that there is no repeat." Then one guy spoke up. He was noticeably spurned, saying their bodies should go back to their families. Then Mr. Kim stood to his feet. He looked pissed. He said, "Then what's the purpose of us being here? Understand, we have no choice. We must do this. All of you knew this coming in. It was made very clear." He said, "Now burn it all, till only the ashes remain. And it might take you all night long, so stay awake. I sure in the hell don't want to go through this again. Don't let the fire go out. Don't make that mistake." He tried to walk, but he had trouble moving about. He was in a lot of pain, and he looked very tired. Mr. H and Ralphie eventually had to carry him out. We all headed out, but after we made a huge fire. The mood was very somber as we started to leave, I guess mainly due to the death of our 2 guys. Though we prevailed, I feel that we were very lucky. Under the circumstances, more could have died. Ralphie stopped briefly as we headed to the tunnel to get his bag that contained the creature's venom. Mr. Kim said, "Hurry, you've got to get to the hospital. Don't worry about the other stuff. We'll get them. We'll meet up with you later and give it to you there." Ralphie had to hurry and then produce an antidote. Remember, Mr. H's son Petey was still in his care. We all left the aqueduct with a new feeling of hope. We arrived at the hospital in a short time after he did. Mr. Kim was immediately checked out by the staff. We found out that he had a couple of broken ribs. I asked him, "Does it hurt?" He said, "Only when I laugh." We were all beat up, more than we had realized. I guess we didn't know the severity of our wounds. In fact, we were so bad that we were hospitalized. That night, we were regarded as Mr. Kim's platoon. The next day, Mr. Kim saw me walking in the hall as he was being wheeled around in a wheelchair. He wheeled right up to me. Then we started to talk. He said, "Look at us, kid. Don't we make a fine pair?" Mr. Kim checked me out and said, "You're hurt bad. You're covered with bandages from head to toe." I said, "Yeah, that was a pretty rough night we had." He said, "You're right, kid. It was truly unforgettable." Mr. Kim was recovering from his wounds as well. He had fractured one of his legs during the fight. He was given a wheelchair and a nurse to himself. I asked him how he felt, and he said, "I guess I'm all right." I asked the nurse, "Where can I go to call my mom?" Mr. Kim said, "Don't worry, kid. I took care of that. I already called and spoke to your stepfather, Tom. I told him that you were okay and where you were at." Mr. Kim said they weren't allowed to come visit me. In fact, none of us are allowed any visitors just yet. He explained to me that we had been quarantined. They'll check us for viruses that can pose a threat. So they kept us a while and did their examinations, and after 2 days we had a meeting in the lobby. When we entered, we were given a standing ovation by some folks that learned that we had killed the beast. I asked Mr. Kim, "What's the deal with this crowd? It seems like someone has told them the news." He said, "Yeah, I think somebody's got a big mouth, but I really can't blame him. What we did was huge. They know what it means to this town, this location." I asked him, "Then why wasn't anything done before?" He quickly answered me, almost without hesitation. He said, "They're just sheep, kid. Need I say more?" It takes courage to stand up and overcome fear. They'd rather turn around and look the other way. I asked, "But hasn't this been going on for many years?" He said, "Yes, it's been going on for a few decades. People don't get involved until it happens to them." I said, "You mean Mr. H only did it for his son Pete?" He said, "This isn't the first time this has happened. Don't think that we haven't had our opportunities. But it took the courage and bravery of this little kid, and for a friend he was willing to risk his own life. They'll be talking for years to come of what you did." When he said that, it made me swell up with pride. I said, "Come on, you make it sound like I did it alone. We earned this victory together. We all did our part." He said, "You're unlike anyone that I've ever known. You're one of a kind. I wish everyone had your heart. What you did that night took the courage of a lion. In all my years, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. It reminded me of the story of David and Goliath, when a little kid slew the giant of the Philistines." I said, "Come on, Mr. Kim, I don't know about all that. You do realize that I was scared out of my mind. And if it happened again, I don't know how I'd react. I might run away and leave the rest of you behind. I've seen you in action, kid. You handle yourself well. Most people would fold under that kind of pressure. When we were at the end of our rope, you excelled. You've impressed me, son, beyond every measure." Then he asked me a question I had thought about. When this is finally over, what are you going to do?" I replied, "I don't know, but I'll figure something out." Then he told me, "I've got a proposition for you. But right now, let's take a few days to heal up first. Besides, I'm in no hurry to get out of this wheelchair." Mr. Kim was being pampered by a particular nurse. She was what we call a butter girl, but he didn't care. It was getting stuffy, so we went outside for a while, and while we were talking, a man walked up to us. When Mr. Kim saw him, he broke out with a smile. They embraced. Then he told me who the man was. It was his brother, which came as a shock to me. I said, "Man, you didn't tell me that you had a brother." He said, "We're the only ones left on our family tree." They both started crying as they hugged each other. His brother looked at me and said, So you're the one. You're the kid that saved my big brother's bacon." He said, "Do you realize what you guys have done? You've made history. This was a huge undertaking." After a while, I sensed that they wanted to be alone, so I said I was going in to get something to eat. And maybe I would ask if I could use the phone. I'll give my mom a call. I know that she must be worried. So I left the brothers alone and went back inside. Besides, I really didn't want to ruin their moment. As soon as I entered the lobby, I was recognized. I was asked about our ordeal if I had a comment. I didn't know how, but those people knew my name. I guessed for what happened, what they had heard. What took place had somehow been proclaimed. Then I realized who it was that spread the word. They wanted to know the details of what happened. I said, honestly, I really don't know where to begin. I said, it was unlike anything that I'd ever imagined. A nightmare I wouldn't want to go through again. They asked questions about the 2 guys that died. I replied, they did well, never losing composure. I will be forever grateful for their ultimate sacrifice. They faced the creatures and fought like soldiers. As I looked through the crowd, I saw a familiar face. It was my mom. She came with Tom to visit me. I said, can you believe all the people in this place? She said, yeah, they've all come to see a celebrity. I just looked at her. I didn't know what to say to that. I could tell she wanted to cry, so I held her close. After what happened, I wondered how she'd react. I really had no clue as to what she had been told. But I was happy that they had come down to visit, though I tried to hide the fact that I had been hurt. Suddenly, she pulls away, and I asked her, what is it? She asked, are those bandages under your shirt? I quickly said yes, but they are only flesh wounds. I was hoping somehow that it would comfort her. She kind of looked at me over and said, so it's true. I said, Mom, listen, I'm all right. You can rest assured. She said, you guys have really stirred up this town. I've never seen so many people in all of my years. And I've even heard the story of what went down. Nervously, I said, don't believe everything you hear. I was hoping that she wasn't told about my secret, the truth about my dad and what happened to him. I knew someday I'd have to tell her, but not just yet. Would she handle it well? The chances were slim. She didn't need to know as far as I was concerned. I said, what good would it do to tell her the truth now? That wouldn't change anything. My dad would not return. It would just cause more heartache that I would not allow. She started telling me accounts of the historic battle. I even heard that you jumped on the creature's back. I said, it was like riding a bull, but without a saddle. I had to help my friends. They were being attacked. I knew then she hadn't been told about my father. I was relieved that she hadn't yet heard that part. If it was hard for me, she would take it a lot harder. She would probably die of guilt and a broken heart. Just then, I saw Mr. Kim come back into the lobby. He had some people ushered into a small office. I realized they were the families of the deceased. They all cried as Mr. Kim offered his condolences. My mom and I walked around talking to the crowd. She was surprised when we received an applause. People even congratulated her. She was so proud. Then I thought she realized what a big deal it was. I called Mr. Kim over and I introduced him to my mom. I guess my mom and Mr. Kim had really never met. As he shook her hand, he started to read her palm. She started to pull away and he said, please don't fret. My mom turns to me with a baffled look in her eyes. I said, just try to relax, Mom. It's not going to hurt a bit. She scaredly asked me, who the heck is this old guy? I said, don't worry. Mr. Kim will be done in a minute. As he finally let her go, he said, that explained a lot. My mom inquisitively asked him, what do you mean? He just said, you know, that's some kid you've got. Just then I thought he was going to spill the beans. He saw my nervousness and stopped right there. We looked at each other, but not a word was said. Then he realized that my mom was not yet aware of what happened to my dad and that he was dead. He redirected the conversation. When he continued, I was relieved we avoided a painful explanation. Then he said, excuse me, I don't mean to be rude, but I've got to go and address this congregation. Then Mr. Kim said, can I have your attention, please? I would like to talk to you for just a minute or two. People may say we are very lucky, but I call it destiny. It was a long time coming, certainly long overdue. And for a few years now, I had almost lost hope. In fact, if I hadn't promised my wife, I would have quit. I searched for answers traveling all over the globe. Suddenly, my luck changed the day I met this kid. Somehow, he helped open my eyes to the practical. I was ignorant to the facts that were in plain sight. I had to look far beyond the realm of the physical. This factor alone put things in a whole new light. Could things have been different? Maybe, I guess, but I can assure you it's a miracle that we survived. And if you chose to argue the price of success, just look at its history. How many people have died? And we would have certainly been among them if it hadn't been for this kid right here to intervene. He jumped on its back when it came at us again. In all my life, it's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Mr. H picked me up like players would their coach as my mom looked on just brimming with pride. And Mr. Kim went so far as to call me a superhero. Just looking at how happy my mom was made me cry. We all met with Dr. Ralphie after a short celebration. We were eager to know the results of the antidote. He said, earlier today I gave the kid an inoculation. And all we can do now is just wait and see how it goes. Mr. H said, I just saw him and he's still the same. Then Ralphie said, hey man, what did you expect? It might take a few days before there's a change. It's going to take a while for it to have any effect. We understood Mr. H was worried about his son. Like us, he too was recovering from the other night. Ralphie said, trust me, everything has been done. We have done our part. It's your boy's turn to fight. For the next 3 days, we waited with anticipation. We were growing impatient, but what could we do? Then, on the 4th day, we erupted with jubilation. Finally, Petey's condition was starting to improve. Dr. Ralphie immediately took him out of Cyroastis. Can someone say that word for me, please? He started to come out of a coma as we stood by. It was a Kodak moment. Should have seen our faces. Mr. H fell to his knees, thanking God as he cried. Dr. Ralphie looked on and breathed a sigh of relief as Mr. Kim started congratulating everyone around. Then he told Ralphie, son, you've just made history. You've cracked the code that's been so profound. Ralphie quickly started to check Petey's vital signs. We stopped celebrating as we all held our breath. Then Ralphie smiled and said, he's gonna be fine, but just to make sure, I want to do a few more tests. Ralphie kept Petey in the hospital for another week, mainly to see if there was any damage to his brain. He found none, which made the case pretty unique. All of his tests showed that Petey was totally sane. Then Mr. H pulled Dr. Ralphie aside for a little chat. You see, he wanted to apologize for his attitude. He said, please forgive me, man, for acting like that, and I want to take this time to express my gratitude. Mr. H was a very prideful man. That was hard for him, giving props to a kid he grew up with on the street. Ralphie realized that, but didn't add to his chagrin. Then he said, hey, man, it's cool. We're still homies. Mr. H replied, homies. I haven't heard that in a while. Ralphie said, I haven't forgotten where I come from. Ralphie's heartfelt remark had made Mr. H smile. He said, we were a lot like Mingo and your son. They embraced each other and then shook hands, acknowledging forgiveness had been accepted. Then Mr. H said, you've grown to be quite a man. Ralphie said, thanks. It feels good to be respected. While Petey was recovering, I visited him every day. My cuts were still healing, so I couldn't leave either. I think that was their way of allowing me to stay. I was anxious to tell him all about our adventure. Petey seemed normal, I guess, except for the hair. He had developed a scruffy beard and sideburns. The nurses liked it, said it was suave and debonair. We all knew why, because he had started to turn. There were no other side effects. He was cleared, and after a week of tests, he was anxious to leave. We were excited to finally be getting out of there. Petey didn't know, but Mr. H had planned a party. We thanked all of the hospital staff before we left, but Petey didn't say a word all of the way to the van. He looked a little nervous, somewhat oppressed. Then I stopped him and asked him, "Petey, are you all right, man?" Then Petey hugged me, which caught me by surprise, as Mr. H pulled up with the van so we could get in. As he released me, I could see tears in his eyes. Then he said, "All of this for the sake of letting me win?" I had almost forgotten how the whole thing started. That all happened because of the game we played. We all had gone on a journey that was uncharted, and history was rewritten by a lifelong crusade. Mr. Kim called it destiny, what took place that night, when finally all of the pieces had come together. Now that I think of it, maybe the old man was right. There's no doubt that my life has changed forever. Thank you guys for 20 minutes of The Alley. Looks like we have one part left. I'll be going live in just a few minutes, so I hope to see you guys there. Thank you, universe. Thank you, God. And thank you, YouTube.